there, and welcome to your FoundSpace Yirri cold plunge. My name's Alex Tyson and I'm the CEO at FoundSpace, and in this video I'm going to take you through everything you need to know about your new Yirri cold plunge, how to fill it up, what to look out for, when to change the filters, how to use the control system, and ultimately how to have a really good time in your new piece of hormetic tech. So let's get into the video and I'll show you around. Okay, the first thing with your Yirri is to fill it up. There's a few things to be conscious of before we start to fill up the tub. First of all, when it's empty, it is the best time to give the bottom a wipe out. Any dust or sediment that built up from the previous uses will now be sitting on the bottom. So give it a nice wipe and just clean down all of the stainless steel so it's looking nice and fresh before you fill it up. Make sure that the plug in the bottom is closed. And we want to fill the Yirri up to a bit above the inlet into the chiller before we turn the chiller on. We also want to be conscious that we've changed our filter, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and that's all packaged up and ready to go. And then we can start to fill the Yirri. It's as simple as putting a hose in and filling it up. Sometimes you may not have a lot of hose length, in which case a clip like this can be great to just lock it in place as it starts to fill. I also like to put my hose as far at the bottom as possible to minimize splashing. That way the stainless steel up in the top areas looks cleaner when it's full and ready to go. So that's first phase. We're gonna do that right now. At this point now that the water is over the exit, on the other side of here, the water is going into the chilling unit. So now that we're over that, we can turn the chiller on and it will start to pull water through here, chill it down and spit it out at the top. We can angle this down so we don't splash too much. That's a cute little way to start to chill the water right away. If you have a short amount of time where you need the water chilled, starting to cool it down as soon as you can is really beneficial. So once the water is over the exit there, we can turn the chiller on. So now you can see the chiller has been activated. It's starting to pump water out the top back into the tub. It's starting to chill, and you can hear when the chiller turns on, it primes for a little bit. And then when the compressor turns on, that's when the fan turns on and the unit is starting to chill. I would also recommend at this point to put the cover half on, and then as soon as it's full and you're done filling it up, put the cover on completely. Keeping the air that's inside the unit in there as best as we can is going to help with cooling down as much as possible. So putting on half of the cover at this point is a good thing to do. Sometimes at this phase, when we turn the chiller on for the first time, it may need to be primed. Reason being is when we change the filter, sometimes an airlock can be created inside the chiller. And so we turn the chiller on, but it doesn't start pumping out water. The way to remedy that is to send the hose into the top inlet. That will fill the chiller with water from the top and help it prime. And sometimes we may need to put some extra water in this bottom, and also that will get water into the chiller and help clear out any airlocks. And that way the chiller will start to run. And you'll get a gauge for it. Sometimes you have to do it quickly, sometimes it takes a little longer depending on how big the airlock is in the system. It's very common, so the solution is just put water in the top or in the bottom, and then you'll hear when the chiller has the water in the pump, it'll start to kick into gear and it'll start to push water out as we saw just now. About at this point where the water is that we can start to consider how much water we want to put into the unit. There's a fill line on the Yirri, which is our recommended fill line. However, some things to keep into consideration are, depending on the use, if it's high use and you're not in the room when those people are using it, it can be better to fill it a little lower, just above the top inlet, as you can see here. Reason being is people who are new or who haven't done it a lot, often when they hop in, they splash about And if there's a lot of water in the unit, you can get a lot of splash outside of the unit. If it's lower use and it's perhaps just yourself and a few others, filling it higher can be quite nice because there's more cold water, you feel more immersed in the experience, and you can control essentially how much mess you make. So play with a little bit. There is a fill line. You can filter that and trial that for a bit, but maybe consider filling it a little lower if it's in a high use environment and filling it a little higher if it's in a low use environment. At this stage, once you've decided you're happy with where it's filled, it's time to put the cover on. Putting the cover on as soon as you can will reduce the amount of time it takes to cool down, especially in the hot environments. Okay, and here we have the control system of the chiller unit on the Yirri. To turn it on, we press the on button down the bottom left here. We'll see the unit turn on. You'll hear it priming the water. And once it primes the water through the system, you'll hear the fan turn on, and eventually you'll hear the compressor turn on, and that's when it's cooling. As we can hear now, the pump is turned on, and soon the cooling system will turn on. There's a few key pieces of information on the screen here. First one is the bottom left, and that is the flow. The flow in the current state is pretty much the best flow you can get, a bit over 19 litres per minute. The flow is a really good indicator as to when the filter will need to be changed. If the flow drops below 14 or 13 litres per minute, that's a good indicator that the filter is due to be changed. Up here we have the current temperature, which is 8.5 degrees, and at the bottom we have the set temperature, which is 3 degrees. To set the temperature, we hit the S, and then we use the plus and the minus button to adjust the temperature. The Yirri will cool to the set temperature, and then it'll wait for the temperature to rise by 1.5 degrees, and then it'll start to cool down to the set temperature again. The fourth button along is the Wi-Fi button, and if we press and hold this button, we'll see a logo start to appear up the top left, which shows the Wi-Fi is activating. We can see it here. Now we can go into the FoundSpace app and we can connect to the Yirri from the app. This flashing logo here is showing that the ozone is currently running. And the ozone runs at a cadence every hour and is set to the correct amount of ozone per the amount of average litres in the tub. We can also set a lock for children by holding down the up and down button here. And we see a lock comes on, and that sets the child lock. So pressing of these other buttons won't activate anything. This is also great in a commercial setting. And that's the main controls of the Yirri. Okay, so to pair to the Yirri, we open up the FoundSpace app, go into settings, and in settings there'll be active sauna, active ice bath, and we go into ice bath. In this case, I'm currently paired to the ice bath at home, but I'm going to pair to this ice bath here. So to do that, I need to hold down the W button on the display, which turns on the Wi-Fi capabilities. And then I go add ice bath. I need to enter the Wi-Fi name, in this case. And I hit done, next. And the app starts to talk to the Yirri. And here we are. Now I'm connected to this Yirri and I can control it nicely. Once you're in the ice bath settings and you hit add ice bath, you'll be prompted to set up an account with Tuya, and you can use the same account credentials that you used to set up your FoundSpace account to do so. Okay, so here are some of the features of the Yirri once connected to the app. We can go into temperature here and we can set our temperature. You can hear the Yirri beeping in the background, which I'm connected to. We can set the child lock remotely, and we can also completely turn it off. We can also turn it on. In the app, we can also run a guided session. We can choose 3 minutes, 5 minutes, in which case...
Your 3-minute ice bath will begin in 25 seconds. My name is Dean Gladstone.
Or we can track our own session and set how long we want to set the timer for. There we go. So some cool little features in there, all of which you can do remotely. I love using these features when I'm coming home from traveling and I want to turn my ice bath on, or even if I'm in the home and my ice bath's been off during the day, I can turn it on during the night time to start to cool it down for the following morning. All right, let's talk about the maintenance on the Yirri, and I'm gonna start with the most important piece, and that is changing over the filter. There's a few little key pieces of information here that'll really help you make it easy when you're changing the filter over. So we're actually gonna do it right now. In this case, the tub is full. You can change the filter over when the tub's full or when the tub's empty, up to you and depending on the scenario, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. In this case, it's full, so I'm gonna unscrew this and I'm going to expect that it's going to be dripping water. Water is going to be coming through the top and the bottom with the pressure from the tub, and it's going to be dripping down, totally normal. To mitigate that, pop a few towels down. Still keeping plenty of space to be able to move because we want to do it up nice and tightly. And it's an unscrew. Have your new filter cartridge near you. Take the old one out, put the new one in. Make sure we fill this up with water and screwing it back on. Nice and tight. There we go. Hand tight is fine. That's it. That's the messiest part of maintenance on the Yirri. And having a nice towel under here sops it up. And there we are, new filter in the Yirri. Some things to keep in mind when you're considering how often to change the filter, how often to change the water. It is really dependent on the use case. If it's used a lot in a human environment, it'll be different to used a lot in a not human environment. Are the people getting in sweaty, or are they clean? Have they rinsed off, or are they dry? Is it personal use in a humid environment and it only gets used a couple times a day, or is it not humid and it gets used a lot of times a day at home because there's a big family or lots of friends are coming around? What's the environment around the Yirri? Is it grass, in which case lots of sediment is going to end up in the tub? Or is it cement, in which case lots of dust is going to end up in the tub? That's the case at mine at home. All of these things will have an influence over how long the water stays clean. In the Yirri, as we know, we have an ozone unit in there and we have this filtration system. With all that in mind, you'll start to notice how often to change the water and how often to change the filter. In high use cases, you might be changing the filter every 2 to 3 days. You might change the water every day. That's a decision for you to make based on your use case. We know that the filter needs changing because the flow rate, which we spoke about earlier, will drop. Anything below 14 or 13 litres per minute is an indication that the filter needs to change. And also, depending on your situation, there's a few little tricks you can employ. At mine at home, I'm on tank water. So when I fill the tub up, it has a bit of a tinge to it. I actually fill the tub up, I keep the old filter in here, I run it for 24 hours, that cleans up the water, and then I put a new filter in, and that way I can have the water in my tub for a month. So there's little things we can do to maximize the filters that we do have and maximize the water. A good rule of thumb is every time you change the water, change the filter. And depending on your use case, that might be every few days or it might be once a month. The Yirri on the inside is a really cold environment, and when that environment comes into contact with a human environment, condensation can build up. It's common and perfectly normal to see a small pool of water underneath Yirri, potentially in the mornings when you go out there for the first time, and also a buildup of water on the timber. You can wipe the timber down as you see fit, but it's a totally normal thing to see. Another important piece is the distance from the chiller housing to the nearest wall needs to be a minimum of 50 centimeters. That provides ample ventilation to allow the chiller to suck the air in and push the air out and complete its cooling duties. So a couple other important pieces there just to ensure the Yirri is working well and performing optimally for a long time. And lastly, to empty the Yirri, we use an 18mm garden hose, not a standard 12mm garden hose. Connect it up, open the valve, and then we go in the tub and we open the plug. Lastly, keep in mind the surface of the floor and the room. If dust builds up regularly, that dust will end up in the Yirri over time as Yirri sucks in air to cool the water down. So keeping a clean surface means you'll reduce the amount of dust buildup, which is good for the longevity of Yirri. So those are all the maintenance pieces and everything you need to know about your Yirri. It's a super exciting moment to have one of the most powerful health products in the world in your home or in your business now. Start to enjoy the benefits, start to use it regularly, get into the app, do some guided sessions, reach out to the FoundSpace team if you want some guidance, and most importantly, have some fun. Again, from me and everyone at FoundSpace, thank you for prioritizing your health and well-being, and we look forward to working with you for a long time. Cheers.